The alarm started screaming at exactly 14:32 station time. Park Do-hyun was walking back from his shift in the lower docks when the red lights began flashing on every wall. He had grease on his hands and tiredness in his bones. 12 hours of fixing broken ship engines did that to a person. All he wanted was a hot meal and his small bed in the worker housing block. But the universe had other plans. "Attention all personnel," the station voice announced. "Dangerous creatures have been released in Sector 7. All civilians must evacuate immediately." "This is not a drill." Don stopped walking. Sector 7 was the commercial zone, the heart of Mirren Station, where hundreds of species came to trade and shop. It was always crowded. If something dangerous was loose there, people would panic that he could already hear the screaming. Aliens of all shapes and sizes ran past him. A tall, blue-skinned Mallory nearly knocked him down. A group of small, furry pikas scrambled over each other in their hurry to escape. Everyone was running in the same direction, away from Sector 7. Do-hyun should have run too. Any smart person would have. But he had left his tool bag in a storage locker near the sector entrance. That bag had cost him 3 months of pay. It had tools his father had given him before he left Earth. "Stupid," he muttered to himself as he pushed against the crowd. "This is so stupid." He made it to the storage locker and grabbed his bag. The hallway was empty now. Everyone had fled. The alarm kept screaming its warning, and the red lights made everything look like it was covered in blood. That was when he heard the sound dot. It was not a roar or a snarl. It was something softer. A whimper. A cry. It sounded like a frightened animal. Do-hyun followed the sound around a corner and into a small plaza. Broken glass covered the ground. Shop displays had been knocked over. Whatever had happened here, it had been violent. And there, huddled against the closed shop door, were 3 creatures. Do-hyun had never seen anything like them. They were about the size of large dogs, with 6 legs and scales that shimmered between black and dark purple. Their eyes were large and golden, and their mouths were full of teeth that looked sharp enough to cut through metal. Long tails wrapped around their bodies as they pressed together. Shaking dot, these were Korath cubs. Do-hyun knew about the Korath. Everyone did. They came from a death world, a planet so dangerous that most species refused to even visit it. Adult Korath were apex predators, the top of their food chain. They had killed entire survey teams. They were monsters, but these were not monsters. These were babies, and they were terrified. The largest cub saw him first. It made a sound, not a growl, but something closer to a question. Its golden eyes were wet with what looked like tears. Do-hyun set down his tool bag slowly. He had grown up on a farm colony before moving to the station. His family had raised animals, including some that were dangerous. He knew that scared animals were more unpredictable than angry ones. He also knew that running would make things worse. "Hey there," he said quietly, keeping his voice low and calm. He crouched down to make himself smaller. "Hey, it is okay. I am not going to hurt you." The cubs watched him. The smallest one was hiding behind the other 2, barely visible except for one golden eye peeking out. Do-hyun did not move closer. He just stayed where he was, crouched low, hands open and visible. He remembered what his mother had taught him about frightened animals. Do not stare. Do not make sudden movements. Let them come to you, he said softly, slipping into Korean without thinking. The voice you selected does not support this language. Please click the upper right corner to switch to another voice. It is okay. The largest cub took a step toward him. Then another. Its nose twitched as it sniffed the air. Do-hyun stayed perfectly still. The cub came closer until it was right in front of him. It sniffed his hand. Its breath was warm and smelled like copper. Up close, Do-hyun could see that its scales were not just black. They had tiny flecks of silver in them, like stars in a night sky. And then the cub pressed its head against his palm. A shiver ran through Dalian. He had expected teeth. He had expected claws. Instead, he felt the cub leaning into his touch like a puppy seeking comfort. "Oh," he breathed. "Oh, you poor thing." The other two cubs came closer now. The middle one, slightly smaller than the first, circled around and sniffed his back. The smallest one crept forward on its belly, still scared but curious. Within minutes, all three cubs were pressed against him. The largest had its head on his knee. The middle one was leaning against his side. The smallest had somehow crawled into his lap and curled into a ball. Doyun sat there in the empty plaza, surrounded by broken glass and flashing red lights, with three apex predators using him as a pillow. "What happened to you?" he asked quietly. He could feel their ribs through their scales. They were thin, too thin. When had they last eaten? Who did this? The cubs did not answer. They just pressed closer. Heavy footsteps made Doyun look up. A squad of station security had arrived, led by Commander Vrel. Vrel was a sketh, an insectoid species with 4 arms and compound eyes that saw everything. Right now, all those eyes were focused on Dohyun. "Human," Vrel said, his voice sharp. "Step away from the creatures." The security team raised their weapons, pulse rifles that could burn through steel. The cubs felt the threat. The largest one stood up and moved in front of Dohyun, a low growl building in its throat. "Wait," Dohyun said quickly. "Wait, do not shoot. They are just scared." "They are Korath," Vrel replied. "They are dangerous. Move away now. They are babies." Dohyun stayed where he was. The smallest cub was still in his lap, trembling. "Look at them. They are starving and terrified. Someone did this to them. That is not your concern. Move away, or we will be forced to fire through you." Dohyun looked at the weapons pointed at him. He looked at the cubs, the large one trying to protect him, the middle one pressing against his back, the small one hiding in his lap. He thought about his tool bag, about his warm bed, about all the smart choices he should make. Then he thought about his mother, who had once stayed up 3 nights straight to nurse a sick animal back to health. He thought about his father, who always said that the measure of a person was how they treated those who could not help themselves. "No," Dohyun said. Vrel's compound eyes flickered. "No. If you want to shoot them, you will have to shoot me first." The security team looked at each other. This was not in their training. Humans were supposed to be reasonable. Humans were supposed to follow orders. But this human was sitting on the ground with 3 predator cubs, and he was not moving. A new voice cut through the tension. "Commander, stand down." A woman pushed through the security line. She was human, with short black hair and sharp eyes behind round glasses. Her uniform marked her as a scientist, specifically a xenobiologist. "Dr. Yoon," Vrel said, "this does not concern you. It absolutely concerns me." Yoon Hannah stepped closer, studying the cubs with professional interest. "These are juvenile Korath. Do you have any idea how rare it is to see them alive outside their home world? And they are..." She paused, her eyes widening. "They are calm. They are calm around the human. They are dangerous," Vrel repeated. "They are imprinted." Hannah looked at Dohyun with something like wonder. "I need time to study this." "Commander, I am invoking Research Protocol 7. These creatures are now under scientific protection." Vrel made a sound of frustration, but he lowered his weapon. "You have 1 hour, Doctor. Then the Council will decide what happens." The security team backed away, keeping their weapons ready. Hannah crouched down next to Dohyun. Up close, he could see the excitement in her eyes. "How did you do this?" Dohyun looked at the cubs still pressed against him. The largest one had stopped growling but was still watching the security team with suspicious golden eyes. I did not do anything, he said. I just did not run. The smallest cub made a soft sound and burrowed deeper into his jacket. Hana smiled. I think you did more than that. She glanced at the retreating security team. We need to move somewhere safe. Can you get them to follow you? Do-hyun stood up slowly. The cubs stood with him, staying close. The smallest one refused to leave his jacket, so he held it like a baby in his arms. I think, he said quietly, they are not going to let me go. And looking at those golden eyes, full of fear and hope and something that might have been trust, Do-hyun realized he did not want them to. The quarantine bay was cold and gray, but Do-hyun did his best to make it comfortable. He had found some old blankets in a storage closet and piled them in one corner. The cubs had immediately claimed the pile as their nest, arranging and rearranging the blankets until they were satisfied. Now all three were curled together in a heap of scales and tails, sleeping peacefully for the first time since their release. Do-hyun sat nearby, watching them breathe. The largest one made small sounds in its sleep, its legs twitching like it was chasing something in a dream. The middle one had its head resting on the smallest one, who was buried so deep in blankets that only its nose was visible. You should eat something. Do-hyun looked up. Yoon Hana stood in the doorway, holding a tray of food. She had been running tests for hours, taking samples and making observations. Dark circles had formed under her eyes, but she looked more excited than tired. I am not hungry, Do-hyun said. You have been sitting there for 6 hours. Hana set the tray down next to him. The cubs are fine. They are sleeping. You need to take care of yourself too. Do-hyun looked at the food. His stomach growled, betraying him. He picked up a piece of bread and took a small bite. What did you find out? He asked. Hana sat down across from him, pulling out her datapad. A lot, and none of it is good. She scrolled through her notes. These cubs are about 4 months old. At that age, they should still be with their mother. Korath families stay together for at least 2 years. But these cubs show signs of early separation. They were taken from their mother very young. Taken by who? That is the question. Hana pulled up an image on her screen. I found traces of a drug in their blood. It is a fear stimulant. Someone gave them this drug before releasing them. They wanted the cubs to be scared and aggressive. Do-hyun felt anger building in his chest. They wanted them to attack people. Exactly. The cubs were supposed to cause chaos. They were supposed to hurt people or be hurt themselves. Either way, someone would have gotten excellent footage of dangerous predators causing destruction on a civilized station. Hana shook her head. It was a setup. Someone wanted to make humans look bad by association. We come from a death world too, remember. There are groups out there who think humans do not belong in civilized space. The Pale Consensus, Do-hyun said quietly. He had heard of them. Everyone had. They were a faction that believed Death World species, humans, Korath, and others, were too dangerous to be allowed among other species. Probably. Hana set down her datapad. But here is the part that matters for you. The drug did not work the way they planned. The cubs were terrified, yes. But instead of attacking, they froze. They were too scared to do anything. And then they found you. Do-hyun looked at the sleeping cubs. They just needed someone to not be afraid of them. It is more than that. Hana leaned forward, her eyes bright with scientific interest. Korath cubs imprint on their caregivers. In the wild, this would be their mother. But when separated too young, they can imprint on other beings. Other species, even. It is rare, but it happens. Imprint? It means they have bonded to you, permanently. Hana watched his face carefully. In their minds, you are their family now. Their pack. They will not willingly leave you, and they will protect you with their lives. Do-hyun was quiet for a long moment. He looked at the cubs, at the largest one with stars in its scales, at the curious middle one, at the tiny one that had refused to leave his jacket. They had known him for less than a day. They had chosen him anyway. What happens now? He asked. Hana's expression darkened. The Galactic Council wants them destroyed. They say the cubs are too dangerous to keep alive. The vote is tomorrow. No. The word came out before Do-yoon could stop it. No, they cannot do that. They can, and they will, unless someone stops them. Hana stood up. I am going to testify at the hearing. I have data that proves the cubs were victims, not villains. But data alone might not be enough. They need to see that these creatures are not monsters. Do-hyun understood what she was asking. You want me to bring them to the hearing? I want you to show the council what I have seen. 3 scared babies who found safety in a human's arms. Hana paused at the door. Get some rest. Tomorrow is going to be difficult. She left. Do-hyun sat alone in the quarantine bay, the soft sounds of sleeping cubs filling the silence. He did not sleep that night. Instead, he watched over them, thinking about his mother and father, about the farm where he grew up, about all the animals he had known. He had bottle-fed baby goats. He had sat up all night with sick chickens. He had once spent 3 days coaxing a frightened dog out from under a collapsed barn. None of those animals had been predators. None of them had teeth that could tear through metal. But looking at the cubs now, Do-hyun did not see monsters. He saw children who had been stolen from their home, drugged, and abandoned in a terrifying place. They deserved better. Sometime in the early hours, the smallest cub woke up. It made a soft crying sound, the kind of noise a baby makes when it cannot find its mother. Do-hyun moved closer, and the cub immediately crawled into his lap, pressing its face against his chest. She, he whispered, stroking its scales. They were smooth and warm under his fingers. She, I am here. I am not going anywhere. The cub made a sound that was almost like a purr. It closed its golden eyes and fell back asleep. Do-hyun held it gently, feeling its heart beat against his hands. Such a small thing. Such a scared thing. And tomorrow, strangers would decide if it lived or died. I will not let them hurt you, he said quietly. I promise. The morning came too fast. Security officers arrived to escort them to the council chamber. Do-hyun stood up, and the cubs stood with him. They were nervous. He could see it in the way they pressed close, in the quick movements of their golden eyes. Stay calm, he told them softly. No growling, no biting. Just stay with me. The largest cub made a low sound of understanding. Or maybe Do-hyun just imagined that it did. Either way, the cubs followed him out of the quarantine bay and into the bright lights of the station corridors. People stopped to stare. Of course they did. A human walking calmly with 3 Karth predators at his heels. It was probably the strangest thing most of them had ever seen. Some aliens ran away. Others pressed against the walls, trembling. A few raised recording devices, capturing the moment for the galactic networks. Do-hyun ignored them all. He kept walking, steady and calm, and the cubs kept following. The council chamber was enormous, a circular room with seats rising in tiers around a central platform. Representatives from dozens of species filled those seats, watching as Do-hyun walked in with his unusual companions. Commander Vrel was there, along with other security officers. Yoon-hana stood to one side, her datapad ready. And at the highest tier sat the 5 members of the Galactic Council, their faces unreadable. Park Do-hyun, the head counselor said. Her name was something Do-hyun could not pronounce, and she was a species he did not recognize, tall and thin, with silver skin and eyes like black pools. You have been brought here to answer for your interference in a security matter. Interference? Do-hyun kept his voice steady. I helped 3 frightened children. That is all. These creatures are not children. They are Karth. They are predators. They are both. Dahyun felt the cubs pressing closer. The smallest one was trying to hide behind his legs. Look at them. Really, look. Do they seem dangerous to you? The counselors leaned forward. The cubs huddled together, their golden eyes wide with fear. The largest one stood slightly in front of the others, trying to look brave even as its legs trembled. They have teeth that can cut through metal, one counselor observed. So do the cutting machines in my workshop, Do-hyun replied. That does not make them evil. Dr. Yoon. The head counselor turned to Hana. You have prepared a report? Hana stepped forward and began presenting her findings. She showed the data about the drug in the cubs' blood. She explained how they had been separated from their mother too young. She described the imprinting process and what it meant. But Do-hyun could see that words were not enough. The counselors listened, but their expressions did not change. They had already made up their minds. Then, one of the counselors, a large, aggressive-looking being with tusks and red eyes, stood up. This is a waste of time, he declared. These creatures are dangerous. The human has been compromised. We should destroy them all and be done with it. He moved toward the platform, his heavy footsteps echoing in the chamber. The largest cub reacted instantly. It stepped forward, placing itself between Do-hyun and the approaching counselor. A low growl built in its throat, not aggressive, but warning. The chamber erupted. Security raised their weapons. Counselors scrambled backward. Someone screamed. But Do-hyun did not move. He placed his hand on the cub's head, gentle and calm. It is okay, he said softly. He is not going to hurt us. Stand down. The cub looked up at him. For a long moment, predator and human stared at each other. Then the cub's growl faded. It sat down, still watching the counselor, but no longer threatening. Silence fell over the chamber. Do you see? Do-hyun said into that silence. It was not attacking. It was protecting. That is what pack animals do. They protect their family. The head counselor studied him with those black pool eyes. And you are its family? Do-hyun looked at the three cubs, the brave one sitting at his feet, the curious one pressed against his leg, the shy one hiding behind him. He thought about the choice in front of him. He could walk away. He could return to his simple life, his tool bag, his warm bed. But he knew he would never do that. Yes, he said. I am. Before the council could respond, the chamber doors burst open. An officer ran in, breathless with shock. Counselors, the officer gasped. A ship has just arrived at the station. A Karth ship. They are demanding to speak with us immediately. The chamber fell into chaos. But Do-hyun stayed still, one hand on the largest cub's head, feeling its warmth beneath his palm. The cub's people had come, and everything was about to change. The news spread across the galaxy like fire. Every network, every station, every planet was talking about the same thing. A human had bonded with Karth predators. The footage from the council chamber played on endless repeat. Do-hyun standing calm while the cub defended him, his hand gentle on its head, his voice steady as he claimed them as family. Some called him a hero. Others called him a fool. Many called him something far worse. Human weaponizes death world predators, one headline screamed. Is this the beginning of a human army? Proof that humans do not belong among civilized species, declared a popular commentator. They cannot help themselves. Violence is in their nature. Do-hyun did not watch the news. He had more important things to worry about. The Karth ship had docked at the station, but its crew had not yet come aboard. They were waiting, the station official said, for proper diplomatic arrangements. What that really meant was that everyone was terrified of them. In the meantime, Do-hyun had been moved to a larger room, still guarded, still isolated, but at least the cubs had more space to move around. He spent his time caring for them, learning their personalities, giving them names. The largest one he called Bomi. It meant spring in Korean, because something about her bright golden eyes reminded him of sunshine after a long winter. Bomi was brave and protective, always positioning herself between the others and any potential threat. She was the leader of the small group, even though she was barely 4 months old. The middle one he called Taeyang, which meant sun. Taeyang was curious about everything. He poked his nose into every corner, investigated every object, and had already figured out how to open the food containers. Doyen had caught him 3 times trying to take apart the room's ventilation panel. The smallest one he called Guri. The name did not mean anything special. It was just a soft, gentle sound that seemed to fit her. Guri was shy and easily frightened. She spent most of her time either hiding in blankets or pressed against Do-hyun's side. But when she felt safe, she would make a soft purring sound that seemed to come from somewhere deep in her chest. Yoon Hana visited every day, bringing food and updates. The news was not good. The Pale Consensus is using this situation perfectly, she said, pacing the room while Taeyang tried to chew on her datapad. They are claiming that you have been mind-controlled by the cubs, that this is some kind of Korath invasion strategy. That is ridiculous, Do-hyun said. Guri was in his lap, as usual, and he stroked her scales absently. Anyone with eyes can see these are just scared babies. Fear does not care about truth. Hannah gently pushed Taeyang away from her equipment. The council is divided. Half of them want to send you and the cubs back to Earth and let humans deal with it. The other half wants to put you all down to prevent any future problems. And the Korath? What do they want? Hannah hesitated. We do not know yet. They have not said anything except that they want to meet the human who touched their young. Do-hyun felt a chill run down his spine. The Korath were protective of their children. Everyone knew that. What would they do to him when they found out he had handled their cubs without permission? But when he looked at Bomi, sitting alert by the door, at Taeyang trying to climb the walls, at Guri purring in his lap, he could not bring himself to regret anything. 3 days passed. On the 4th morning, Commander Vrel appeared at his door. The Korath delegation is ready to meet you, Vrel said. His compound eyes showed nothing, no sympathy, no hostility, just cold professionalism. You will come with me now. Do-hyun stood up slowly. The cubs stood with him, immediately alert. Bomi moved to his side, her golden eyes scanning for threats. Taeyang positioned himself behind, ready to act. Guri pressed against Do-hyun's legs, trembling but refusing to be left behind. They come with me, Do-hyun said. It was not a question. Rel made a clicking sound that might have been annoyance. Fine, but if they attack anyone, we will put them down immediately. They will not attack anyone. Do-hyun walked forward, and the cubs followed. They are with me. The meeting was held in a large diplomatic chamber, far from the crowded areas of the station. Security officers lined the walls, weapons ready. Council representatives sat in observation booths above, watching through thick glass. Yoon Hana stood in one corner, her face pale but determined, and in the center of the room stood the Korath. There were 5 of them, each one massive. They stood twice as tall as Do-hyun, their 6 legs planted firmly on the floor. Their scales were darker than the cubs' deep black, shot through with veins of silver that pulsed faintly with their heartbeats. Their eyes glowed golden in the chamber's light, but the one in front was different from the others. She was larger, covered in old scars, and she radiated authority like heat from a fire. When she moved, the others moved with her. When she stopped, they stopped. This was Matriarch Sylvan, elder of the Korath delegation. She looked at Do-hyun with those glowing eyes, and he felt very, very small. This is the human, Sylvan said. Her voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. This is the one who touched our young. Do-hyun forced himself to stand straight. Yes, I am Park Do-hyun. So-van moved closer. Each step made the floor shake slightly. The security officers raised their weapons higher, fingers trembling on triggers. The cubs pressed closer to Do-hyun. Bomi growled softly, but she did not attack. She knew, somehow, that this was not an enemy. So-van stopped directly in front of Do-hyun. She was so close that he could feel the heat radiating from her body, could smell the strange metallic scent of her scales. Up close, he could see the details of her scars, old battle wounds from a life of survival. You did not run, So-van said. It was not a question. No, our young were drugged, frightened, abandoned in a strange place. Any creature would run from them. I grew up on a farm, Do-hyun said. His voice was steady, though his heart was pounding. I know what scared animals look like. Running makes it worse. So-van tilted her massive head. You speak of them as animals. But they are Karth. They are hunters. They are death. They are children. Do-hyun met her glowing eyes without flinching. Hungry, scared children who needed help. What they are does not matter. What they needed did. Silence fell over the chamber. The security officers gripped their weapons tighter. The council members leaned forward in their booths. Yoon-hana held her breath. So-van began to circle Do-hyun, moving slowly, studying him from every angle. Her massive tail swept the floor behind her, leaving trails in the dust. The galaxy fears us, she said as she walked. They call us monsters, predators. They see only our teeth, our claws, our strength. They do not see what we truly are. What are you truly? Do-hyun asked. So-van stopped in front of him again. We are family. We are pack. We protect our own with everything we have. We do not abandon our young. We do not leave the weak behind. She leaned down, bringing her face close to his. And we remember those who help us. Always. Do-hyun held his ground. Then you understand why I could not leave them. Yes. So-van's voice softened, just slightly, but enough to notice. I understand. She looked at the cubs clustered around Do-hyun's legs. Bomi stood tall, meeting the matriarch's gaze. Taeyang had stopped fidgeting and was watching with unusual stillness. Guri had emerged from behind Do-hyun, her golden eyes wide with wonder as she looked at the massive adult of her species. They have bonded to you, So-van said. The imprint is complete. They consider you pack. Dr. Yoon explained this to me. Then you understand what this means. So-van straightened to her full height. To the Korath, pack is everything. We would die for our pack. We would kill for our pack. These cubs have chosen you as their family. This is not a small thing. Do-hyun looked at the cubs, at Bomi's bravery, Taeyang's curiosity, Guri's gentle trust. I know. The question is, So-van said slowly, do you accept them? Do you claim them as your pack human? Or will you abandon them when it becomes difficult? Everyone in the room was watching. The council. The security. Yoon-hana. Even the other Korath stood motionless, waiting for his answer. Do-hyun thought about everything that had happened. He thought about the comfortable life he had built on the station, the simple work, the quiet routine, the peaceful solitude. He thought about how much easier it would be to walk away, to let someone else deal with this problem. Then he looked at Guri, who had finally crept out from behind him and was standing at his feet, looking up at him with complete trust. I do not know what is going to happen, Do-hyun said. I do not know if the council will let us stay together. I do not know if the galaxy will ever accept us. But I can promise you this. He crouched down and gathered the cubs close. Bomi pressed her head against his shoulder. Taeyang leaned into his side. Guri climbed into his arms. I will never abandon them, Do-hyun said. Whatever happens, wherever we go, I will be there. They are my family now." Sylvan was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, she did something that no Karth had ever done to an outsider. She lowered her head and exposed her throat. A gasp ran through the chamber. The other Karth dropped to their knees. Even the hardened security officers looked shocked. "What?" Diane started. "It is acceptance," Yunhana said, her voice barely above a whisper. "In Korath culture, exposing the throat is the highest sign of trust. She is acknowledging you as pack, as kin." Sylvan raised her head, and for the first time something like warmth entered her golden eyes. "Welcome to the family, Park Dohyun," she said. "The cubs stay with you. This is our judgment." Dohyun felt tears prick his eyes. He blinked them away quickly, but not before Bomi reached up and gently licked his cheek. "Thank you," he managed to say. Sylvan turned to face the observation booths, where the council members sat in stunned silence. "The Korath have spoken," she declared. "These cubs are under the protection of our people, and under the protection of their human guardian. Anyone who harms them will answer to us." No one argued. No one even moved. But somewhere in the shadows of the station, someone was already planning their next move. The Pale Consensus had not given up. They still wanted their war, and they would do anything to get it. The days after Sylvan's declaration were strange and wonderful. Dohyun was moved from his small room to proper quarters, a large living space with room for the cubs to run and play. Food arrived regularly, real food now instead of emergency rations. Visitors came too, though they kept their distance from the cubs. The galaxy was still watching. The news networks had divided into camps. Some praised Dohyun as proof that understanding could bridge any gap. Others condemned him as a traitor to civilized species. But most people were simply curious, watching the footage of a human and 3 Karth, cubs living together like some impossible family. Matriarch Sylvan visited every day. At first, Dohyun was nervous around her. She was massive and terrifying, with claws that could tear through steel and a presence that made even the station commanders bow their heads. But he quickly learned that beneath all that power was something else, a deep, fierce love for her people. "The cubs are healthy," she observed during one visit, watching Taiyang chase his own tail in circles. They have gained weight. Their scales shine. "I try to feed them well," Dohyun said. "And they sleep a lot. Guri, especially." Sylvan made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Guri, the small one. She reminds me of my own daughter when she was young. Shy, but stronger than she knows." "You have a daughter?" "I have many daughters. Many sons, too." Sylvan settled herself on the floor, her massive body folding gracefully. "Our families are large. We need them to be. Our world is dangerous. Many young ones do not survive their first year." Dohyun felt a chill. "That is terrible. It is life." Sylvan's golden eyes were distant. "We learn early that every moment with loved ones is precious. We do not waste time on grudges or small hatreds. We hold each other close because we know how quickly everything can be taken away." Bomi, who had been sleeping in a corner, woke up and padded over to Sylvan. The matriarch looked down at the cub with something like tenderness. "Hello, young one," she said softly. "You are brave. You protected your human when others threatened him. That is good. That is Korath." Bomi made a pleased sound and rubbed her head against Sylvan's leg. Dohyun watched them together, the massive elder and the tiny cub, and felt a warmth spread through his chest. This was what family looked like. Not just blood or species, but choice, care, love. "Matriarch," he said quietly, "can I ask you something?" "You may. Who took them?" "The cubs, I mean. Who stole them from their mother?" Sylvan's warmth vanished. Her golden eyes hardened into something cold and dangerous. "We are investigating," she said. "We believe it was a group called the Pale Consensus. They have been causing problems for years, stirring up hatred against Deathworld species. They see humans in Korath as threats to their peaceful galaxy. Why would they steal cubs? To create fear." Sylvan's voice was a low growl. They wanted the cubs to attack innocent people. They wanted footage of Korath violence to spread across every network. They wanted to prove that we are monsters who cannot be trusted. But the cubs did not attack anyone. No, they found you instead. Sylvan looked at Doyun with those ancient, knowing eyes. The Pale Consensus made a mistake. They underestimated our young. And they underestimated humans. What will happen to them? The Pale Consensus, I mean. When we find them, they will face Korath justice. Sylvan showed her teeth in what was definitely not a smile. It will not be pleasant. Dohyun nodded slowly. He did not feel sorry for them. Anyone who would drug babies and throw them into chaos deserved whatever was coming. But something else was bothering him. Something he had noticed over the past few days. "Matriarch, I have seen some of the station crew acting strangely, watching our quarters too closely, speaking in whispers when they think no one is listening." Sylvan's eyes narrowed. "You are observant. I work in the lower docks. I learn to notice when something is wrong." Dohyun paused. "I think the Pale Consensus still has people on this station. We have suspected the same thing." Sylvan stood, her massive form unfolding like a mountain rising from the earth. "We have been watching, waiting. They will make their move soon, and when they do, we will be ready." "What kind of move?" Sylvan was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was heavy with ancient wisdom. "They have lost the story they wanted to tell. The cubs are not monsters. The human is not a victim. Their plan has failed. But people like them do not accept failure. They will try again, and this time they will be more desperate." "Desperate people make mistakes," Dohyun said. "Yes, but desperate people are also dangerous." Sylvan moved toward the door, then paused. "Keep the cubs close, Park Doyen. Do not let them out of your sight. And trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is." She left. Dohyun sat in the quiet room, surrounded by sleeping cubs, and felt the weight of her warning settle on his shoulders. That night, he could not sleep. He lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft sounds of the cubs breathing. Bomi was curled at his feet. Taiyang had somehow gotten under the blankets and was a warm weight against his side. Guri was in her favorite spot, tucked against his chest, her small body rising and falling with each breath. His family. His pack. He would protect them with everything he had thought around midnight. He heard something. A soft sound, almost like metal scraping against metal. It came from somewhere in the walls, from the maintenance tunnels that ran throughout the station. Bomi heard it too. Her golden eyes snapped open, and a low growl built in her throat. Dohyun sat up slowly, careful not to disturb Guri. "What is it, girl? What do you hear?" Bomi stood and moved toward the wall, her ears, or the small holes on the sides of her head that served as ears, twitching. Taiyang woke up next, his curious nature overcoming his sleepiness. He joined Bomi at the wall, sniffing. Then the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in immediately, casting everything in a dim red glow. An alarm started blaring, different from the one Dohyun had heard before. This one was deeper, more urgent. "Warning," the station voice announced. "Reactor coolant leak detected in Section 14. All personnel evacuate immediately." This is not a drill. Section 14. That was where they were. Doyen's blood went cold. This was not an accident. This was the move Sylvan had warned him about. He grabbed Guri and held her close. Momi Taiyang, stay with me. We need to go. Now. He ran for the door and pressed the release panel. Nothing happened. He tried again. Still nothing. They were locked in. No. Do-hyun pounded on the door. Open! Someone help! But no help came. The station was evacuating. Everyone was running in the opposite direction, away from the reactor leak, away from them. A hissing sound filled the room. Do-hyun looked up and saw something leaking from the ventilation system. Not gas, not yet, but something was coming. The pale consensus was not just trying to kill them. They were going to make it look like an accident. Bomi pawed at the door, her claws leaving deep scratches in the metal. She looked back at Do-hyun with desperate golden eyes. I know, girl. I know. Do-hyun forced himself to think. There had to be another way out. There had to be something. His eyes fell on the ventilation grate that Taiyang had tried to open days ago. It was small, too small for an adult human, but maybe not too small for the cubs. Taiyang. Do-hyun knelt down by the grate and pulled it off the wall. Beyond it was a narrow shaft, leading into darkness. Go through there. Find help. Can you do that? Taiyang looked at the shaft, then back at Do-hyun. He made a sound of protest. I cannot fit, buddy. But you can. Do-hyun's voice cracked. Go. Find Hannah. Find Solvan. Tell them where we are. Taiyang still did not move. He pressed himself against Do-hyun's leg, unwilling to leave. Bomi made a sharp sound, a command. She nudged Taiyang toward the shaft with her nose, pushing him firmly. For a moment, the two cubs stared at each other. Something passed between them, an understanding, a promise. Then Taiyang turned and disappeared into the shaft. Do-hyun watched him go, praying that he would be fast enough. The hissing sound grew louder. The air was getting thicker. Do-hyun's eyes started to burn. He pulled his shirt over his nose and mouth and backed away from the vent, holding Guri tight. Bomi stood in front of them both, her body positioned between them and the door, ready to fight whatever came through. Good girl, Do-hyun whispered. Good, brave girl. Time stretched. Seconds felt like hours. The air grew worse. Do-hyun's head started to spin. Then he heard something on the other side of the door. Not footsteps, something heavier. Something stronger. The door buckled. Metal screamed as something tore through it from the other side. Light poured through the gap, not the red emergency light, but golden light, warm and alive. A massive clawed hand reached through the opening and ripped the door off its frame. Matriarch Solvan stood in the corridor, her golden eyes blazing, her scales glowing with inner fire. Behind her stood the other Korath, and beside them was Taiyang, his small body trembling but triumphant. Park Do-hyun, Solvan said. We have come for our pack. Do-hyun tried to answer, but his legs gave out. Solvan caught him with one massive arm, lifting him like he weighed nothing. With her other arm, she gathered Bomi and Guri. Go, she commanded the others. Get them to safety, now. The last thing Do-hyun saw before unconsciousness claimed him was Bomi's golden eyes, watching over him even as they ran. Still protecting. Still loyal. Still family. Do-hyun woke up in a medical bay, surrounded by worried faces. Yoon Hannah was there, her eyes red from lack of sleep. Commander Vrel stood by the door, his compound eyes showing something that might have been concern. And at the foot of his bed, curled together in a pile of scales and tails, were his cubs. How long? Do-hyun's voice came out as a croak. 12 hours. Hannah pressed a cup of water into his hands. Drink, slowly. Do-hyun obeyed, letting the cool water soothe his burning throat. As his head cleared, memories came flooding back. The darkness, the gas, the terror of being trapped. The cubs, he said urgently. Are they okay? They are fine. Better than fine, actually. Hana smiled, though there were tears in her eyes. Taiyang made it through the ventilation system in record time. He practically dragged the first person he found to the Korath quarters. They said he would not stop making noise until they followed him. Dohyun looked at Taiyang, who was watching him with bright, curious eyes. "Good boy. You saved us." Taiyang made a pleased sound and burrowed deeper into the pile of cubs. "What happened?" Dohyun asked. "The reactor leak. Was it real?" "It was real, but contained." Commander Vrel stepped forward. "The leak was deliberately caused in your section only. Someone tampered with the cooling system and locked down your quarters. They wanted it to look like an accident. The pale consensus. Yes, we have arrested 7 of their agents on the station, including 2 who worked in maintenance." Vrel's voice was cold with anger. "They confessed everything. They thought they could eliminate you and the cubs and blame it on equipment failure. They were wrong." Dohyun closed his eyes. 7 people. 7 people who had decided that 3 baby animals and 1 human were worth killing to prove a point about death worlds. What will happen to them? Station law handles some of it, Vrel said. But the Korath have claimed the right to punish those who endangered their young. I do not think you want to know the details. No, Dohyun did not want to know. He was not a violent person. But he could not feel sorry for people who would murder children. A deep voice rumbled from the doorway. "He is awake." Matriarch Sovan entered the medical bay, ducking her head to fit through the door. Her golden eyes swept over Dohyun, checking for injuries before settling on his face. "You survived," she said. "Because of you." Dohyun tried to sit up straighter. "Thank you for coming for us. You are pack. We protect our pack." Sovan moved to the bed and looked down at the sleeping cubs. Taiyang showed great courage. He will be remembered for this. He was amazing. Dohyun reached out and stroked Taiyang's scales. The cub made a happy sound without waking up. They all were. Bomi stood guard over us the whole time. She never stopped protecting us. She has the heart of a warrior. Sylvan's voice was warm with pride. And Guri? Dohyun looked at the smallest cub, who was curled in a tight ball between her siblings. She was scared, but she stayed calm. She trusted me to keep her safe. That is its own kind of courage. Sylvan sat down, or rather, folded herself into a sitting position that still left her towering over everything else in the room. The galaxy has been watching, Park Dohyun. They saw what happened. They saw a human nearly die protecting Korath cubs. They saw those cubs refuse to abandon their human. What are they saying? Many things. Some still fear us, both humans and Korath. Some still call us monsters. Sylvan showed her teeth in what Dohyun now recognized as a smile. But many more are asking questions. They're wondering if perhaps they were wrong about Deathworld species. If perhaps family matters more than where you come from. Hannah nodded eagerly. The coverage has been incredible. There are petitions across 3 sectors demanding better treatment of Deathworld immigrants. 2 major political parties have changed their stance on human citizenship rights. And you, Dohyun, have become the face of it all. Dohyun groaned. I did not want to be famous. I just wanted to help some scared babies. And that is exactly why you are the perfect face for this movement. Hannah's eyes sparkled. Because you are genuine. You did not do any of this for politics or attention. You did it because it was right. What happens now? Dohyun asked. Can we stay on the station? Vrel and Sylvan exchanged glances. Something passed between them, an understanding of some kind. We have been discussing that, Vrel said slowly. The Galactic Council has made a decision. Given everything that has happened, they believe it would be best if you took on a new role. Dohyun's heart sank. They want me to leave. No. Sylvan leaned forward, They want you to stay. As the first official human Korath liaison. Dahyun blinked. What? It is a new position, Rel explained. Created specifically for this situation. You would serve as a bridge between human and Korath communities. You would help other species understand both cultures. You would show the galaxy what cooperation between Deathworld species can look like. And the cubs? They stay with you. Sylvan's voice was firm. That was never in question. You are their pack. Separating you would be cruel and pointless. They would simply find their way back to you. Dohyun looked at the sleeping cubs. Bomi had shifted in her sleep and was now lying across his legs, her weight warm and comforting. Taiyang had his nose tucked under his tail. Guri had somehow rolled over and was now lying on her back, her small chest rising and falling peacefully. His family. His pack. I do not know anything about being a liaison, he said quietly. You know more than you think. Sylvan reached out and placed one massive clawed hand on his shoulder, gentle despite its power. You know how to listen. You know how to stay calm when others panic. You know how to see frightened children instead of dangerous monsters. That is what the galaxy needs to learn. Dahan was quiet for a long moment. He thought about his life, the farm he had left behind, the simple mechanic's job he had built, the quiet existence he had carved out among the stars. That life was gone now. It could never come back. But looking at the cubs, at Hana's hopeful face, at Sylvan's steady presence, he realized he did not want it back. Okay, he said. I will do it. Sylvan made a sound of approval. Hana let out a breath of relief. Even Vrel's rigid posture seemed to relax slightly. But I have one condition, Dohyun added. Name it, Sylvan said. I still want to do maintenance work sometimes. Fixing things helps me think. He smiled. And the cubs like watching me work. Taiyang especially. He's going to be a great engineer someday. Sylvan laughed, a deep rumbling sound that shook the walls. Done. You will be the only diplomat in history who smells like engine grease. Dohyun laughed too, and the movement woke the cubs. Bomi raised her head and looked at him with those golden eyes, checking that he was okay, that nothing was wrong. He reached down and scratched behind her ear. It is okay, girl. Everything is okay. And for the first time since this whole thing started, he believed it. 3 months later, Dohyun stood on the observation deck of Mirren Station, watching the stars. The cubs were with him. They were always with him now. Bomi sat at his side, dignified and alert. Taiyang was investigating a control panel nearby, his curiosity never satisfied. Wuri was tucked inside his jacket, her favorite spot, watching the universe through half-closed eyes. They had grown in those 3 months. Bomi was nearly as tall as Dohyun's waist now, her scales deepening to a rich purple-black. Taiyang had started showing the silver patterns of an adult, bright lines tracing across his body like circuits. Even Guri was bigger, though she was still the smallest and still the shyest. You look thoughtful. Dohyun turned. Hana had joined him, 2 cups of coffee in her hands. Just thinking about how much has changed, he said, accepting a cup. Good changes? He considered the question. His life was completely different now. He spent his days talking to delegates, explaining Korath culture, helping humans navigate their new place in the galaxy. He had given speeches, attended ceremonies, appeared on news networks. He had become a symbol whether he wanted to be or not. But at the end of every day, he came back to his quarters. And waiting for him were 3 pairs of golden eyes, 3 sets of clawed feet running to greet him, 3 warm bodies pressing close because they had missed him. Good changes, he said finally. Strange and scary sometimes, but good. Bomi pressed her head against his hand, and he stroked her scales absently. She had grown, but she was still his brave girl, Still the one who stood between him and danger. Still the leader of their little pack. I read the latest survey results, Hana said. Public opinion on Death World species has shifted 15% in the last 3 months. 15%. That is incredible progress. Is that because of us? Partly. Mostly it is because of you. Hana smiled. People see you with the cubs, and they cannot help but question their assumptions. If a Karath and a human can be family, maybe the galaxy is not as simple as they thought. Dahyun looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, the world he had left behind. Somewhere out there was the Korath homeworld, a place of danger and beauty that he might someday visit. And here, on this station between the stars, a mechanic and 3 predator cubs had become something more than anyone expected. Guri made a soft sound from inside his jacket. She was getting too big for this spot, but she refused to give it up. Do-hyun smiled and adjusted the fabric to give her more room. "What do you think, little one?" he asked softly. "Did you ever imagine this, that first day when you were so scared?" Guri did not answer. She just purred and nestled closer. Taeyang had finished his investigation of the control panel and trotted over to join them. He looked up at Do-hyun with those bright, curious eyes that never stopped asking questions. "I know, buddy. You want to know how everything works." Do-hyun knelt down and scratched under Taeyang's chin. "One day I will teach you. We have time." They had time. That was the miracle of it all. They had time to grow, to learn, to become whatever they were meant to be, together. Bomi stood up suddenly, her ears twitching. A moment later, Do-hyun heard it too, heavy footsteps approaching. Matriarch Sovan appeared at the entrance to the observation deck. She was not alone. Behind her walked a young Karath female, smaller than Sovan, but with the same proud bearing. "Park Doyen," Sovan said. "I want you to meet my daughter, Mira. She has asked to learn from you." Do-hyun looked at the young Karath, then back at Sovan. "Learn from me? You have shown that different species can be family. Myra wants to understand how. She wants to help build bridges, as you have." Sovan's golden eyes gleamed with something like pride. "I told her there is no better teacher in the galaxy." Do-hyun felt his face grow warm. "I do not know about that." "I do." Sovan placed a massive hand on his shoulder. "You taught the galaxy something it had forgotten, Park Do-hyun. You reminded us that courage is not about strength. It is about staying when others run. It is about choosing love over fear." Do-hyun looked at his cubs, Bomi standing proud at his side, Taeyang already sniffing curiously at Myra, Guri peeking out from his jacket with wide golden eyes. He thought about that day in the plaza, when 3 terrified babies had chosen to trust a stranger instead of attacking him. They had chosen him, and he had chosen them. "Okay," he said. "I will teach what I can." Sovan nodded, satisfied. Mira made a sound of excitement and bounded forward to meet the cubs properly. Within minutes, she and Taeyang were chasing each other around the observation deck while Bomi watched with dignified amusement. Hana laughed. "Look at them. The future of human-Karath relations, playing like puppies. That is the point, is it not?" Do-hyun smiled. "It is not about politics or speeches or surveys. It is about this. About family. About playing together and growing together and being there for each other." He looked out at the stars one more time. So many worlds. So many species. So much fear and misunderstanding. But maybe, one small family at a time, things could change. Guri made a soft sound from his jacket. She was getting sleepy. "Come on, everyone," Do-hyun called. "Time to go home?" Bomi appeared at his side immediately. Taeyang came running, with Myra close behind. They walked together through the station corridors, a human, 4 Karath, and a future bright with possibility. Some people still stared. Some still whispered, but many others smiled now, waved, called out greetings. The galaxy was learning. Slowly, painfully, but learning. And it had all started because a mechanic did not run from 3 scared babies. That was the most human thing of all.